Joyce Price, and I am an animal science major at University of Maryland, and I'm here with Dr. Alisha Bretz, who works with diagnosing and rehabbing horses. So the first question I have is, what does a normal day at your job look like?
So there isn't normal. The key to being an equine practitioner is that every day is different. We aim to start appointments around 9. We try to end around 4 to 5 p.m. Our practice is really good about trying to keep good work-life balance. As far as what happens in those days and how normal they are is totally dependent on the season and how many emergencies call in that day. I mean, sometimes what you started out doing that day can turn into a completely new set of calls and all your other calls moved. And so there isn't really a normal. It's kind of
always
the way it is.
craziness.
Yeah, always new, always exciting.
That's good. How many emergencies do you typically have or around?
Oh, that is also super variable with the time of year. Spring and fall are busy. Spring is very busy. And then summer's moderately busy. And then fall's kind of busy again. And then winter's really slow. So, in winter, you might have one emergency. And in spring, you might have 6 emergencies call in that need to be added into the schedule for the day. It's kind of all over the place. And
is that because that's when the horses are more active and competing and stuff?
Spring, you just have a lot more things going on. You have mares foaling out, so you have emergencies related to babies and delivery and sick foals and stuff like that. Horses are getting tuned up and starting to show, so they get injured or lame and they need to be fit in before the next show, and people are trailering them and they cut their head open on the trailer and do stuff like that. So they're not just staring at them out in a snowy field, which is more what they do with them in winter, or they leave and go to Florida with them in the winter. So yeah, it's just when horses are doing all sorts of things. And you've also breeding mares can be a bit of an emergency because you have to just kind of do it when the mare is ready. So.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so my next question. How would you describe yourself as a veterinarian? What special qualities do you bring to the profession?
So I think I'm very empathetic and personable, which I think helps me connect with owners, makes them comfortable, confident in my recommendations and my overall care. I excel at problem solving, critical thinking, improvising, things that you have to do when you're on the fly working out of a truck in the middle of a field. So, you don't always have every little thing you'd like to have. Equipment breaks, power doesn't work, stuff like that. So you have to be able to just kind of go with the flow while being, confident and kind and showing you care about your patient.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been debating going into veterinarian school or just focus on physical therapy. And throughout that decision making, I've heard a lot of negative comments about going to veterinarian school. Did you have any issues, or did you have a good process, or would you do it again?
It was hard. It was unlike kind of anything I'd done before. It was harder than any of my previous schooling by far. I would likely do it again, but I think the cost of the education is starting to make a lot of people say that the answer is they wouldn't do it again.
Yes.
I think if you find veterinarians who say they wouldn't do it again, it is usually more a lament of their educational debt and not usually that the vet school itself was just so horrible that they couldn't handle it for 4 years. Most people who get into vet school to begin with can usually hang in there. But a lot of us regret the amount of debt that we took on to do that. So.
Yes, that is one negative thing. It's unfortunate.
Yes, it's a major problem in the industry.
Yes. What might be the salary range at the beginning of this career versus being in the position for 10 or 15 years?
So, unfortunately, back to educational debt, not what it should be for the economic investment you put into it.
Yeah.
It's difficult, especially to make equine salaries competitive with small animal salaries. You're just not going to produce as high of an income for the practice as far as what your bills add up to at the end of the day and what your total amount that you earn the practice is going to be, because you can't see, you rarely can see 30 horses in a day. I mean, sometimes you go to a vaccine appointment and you plow through vaccinating 20 horses and leave, but you can't see 30 sick horses in a day, because you don't have 3 techs working them up in the back while you're seeing the next patient up front. You can't have 15-minute time slots like lots of small animal vets do. So that makes it hard. I would say starting pay for a new graduate in equine straight out into a job varies a lot by location, but it would vary from like 55 to 70,000 depending on the job location. That would be a guaranteed base. Most places guarantee you a certain amount of money, but then you're also paid a percentage of what we call your production. So it's, what you earn for the practice. And if that percentage exceeds your salary, then you make more money. So that's kind of how that works in almost all practices, and how it works in veterinary medicine as a whole. If you go into an internship straight out of school, there are perks like housing provided sometimes and stuff like that. And internships last for a year and tend to pay more in the range of 30 to 40K. But then you have a better, lots of times a leg up on other people applying for jobs. Because usually you go to a big practice and you see lots of cases and work like a dog, but learn a lot of things. And then as it goes on, I would say when you're 10 years, 10 years out, you should be making at least 70 to 80K. And then 15 years out, it really depends on where your career track's taking you. Have you stayed an associate? Are you part-time? Are you full-time? Do you own a practice? A lot of people 15 years out at least own part of the practice they work for. And owners usually make at least 100K. So, depending, again, a lot of this is dependent on where you practice, but just like any career, if it pays well and the area is more affluent, or if it pays less, the area costs less to live in. So it's, it balances out.
Yeah. I saw on, is it Monocacy? Is that how it's pronounced? On your little biography, you originally started in Virginia working?
Yeah. So I started my own practice straight out of school.
Awesome.
And I practiced on all large animals in Southern Virginia for about 5 years before I moved into Northern Virginia and focused a lot more on sport horse medicine and strictly equine, and was there until 2018 before I came over into Maryland.
Did you find a difference between the states with horses?
There's a big difference between Southern Virginia and the Northern Virginia area. Not a huge difference between Northern Virginia and Maryland. Other than, maybe we do dip into Northern Loudoun County as part of our coverage area now. But before I was doing a lot through like Middleburg, Upperville, and that kind of area. And I would say maybe a bit more competitive and a bit more intense, high paced. It's a little calmer over here, but overall, same general decent quality sport horses, nice horses, show horses. It's kind of what the area is known for.
Yes. All right. What degree and qualifications did you go through? Did you just get your DVM, or did you have to get any other license?
So I just got my DVM. I did not do an internship. I went straight out and gave myself my own internship with starting my own practice.
There you go.
Yeah, and I learned a lot. And I would say that you're not going to probably come straight out of school into an area like this in practice without an internship or some, at least a couple years experience somewhere else. Just a little high paced. The clients are really knowledgeable. And so it's a little hard to be a brand new spanking shiny new graduate up here without any experience. Yes. They can kind of sniff that out. So I would say to practice in this particular area, you usually need a year or two of experience.
Okay. Was there anything stopping you from doing an internship, or did you always just want to start your own?
I I applied for a couple, got offered one, but it was on the other side of the country and just decided we didn't want to do that and didn't
Yeah.
get offered the one locally that I was looking at. And so then the opportunity just came to go serve an area that really didn't have a veterinarian and that was struggling. And so I just said, why not?
Awesome. Okay. Did you have any trouble like finding a job after your practice?
I would say that when we graduated in 2009, it was hard because in 2008 was like the big economic crisis. And a lot of practices will tell you that they're now like a great 3 doctor practice, but they were a 6 doctor practice in 2006. They were an 8 doctor practice. They were, especially in more affluent areas like the DC metro area, Northern Virginia, where I think when the housing market fell out and things got really bad, people with higher levels of lifestyles really tumbled, and horses are a luxury item, in the end of the day. Being able to afford their care and all of that is a luxury.
That's, yeah.
And so a lot of practices all across the country have never quite gone back to what they were pre 2008. So 2009 was rough. Yeah, there were not tons of jobs around. And I think I think some places weren't even taking interns that normally took interns because they didn't even want to pay the intern salary. So I think there was very little on the job market. Now, I would say it's shifted back the other way around. We are actually hiring right now, and we are one of multiple practices hiring in the area, and the number of applicants is small.
Oh, really?
So yeah, and I would say in small animal medicine as well, most people are saying that they're hiring like crazy and they just can't find anyone.
Yeah, I'm
So
working at
it's
a
back and forth a lot.
yeah, I work at a companion animal hospital and we're always struggling to find help.
Yeah.
It's crazy, especially with COVID. Everything's just crazier now and you need the more help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say COVID's made a lot of it a lot harder too.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Was there a lot of like interest? Do you think there was more interest back when you went to school than there was now with horses and stuff?
I think that there were a lot more people um that wanted to practice equine medicine. I think that the problem now is the amount of debt graduates are saddled with. It's hard to turn down the more lucrative small animal salaries, even if you had your heart set on practicing equine. So I think the amount of applicants that we're getting out of it's becoming a common trend for these people to go do internships at the big hospitals, get used up, burn out, spit out, and they're looking around at salaries, and they're not happy with them, and they just go small animal. And then it's hard to ever get them back because they're like, why would I do that? I make so much more. And I don't have
Yeah.
any on call. I mean, at 5 p.m. I shut the doors and I say the emergency clinic's down the street. So, which we don't get the luxury of doing. So,
No. Do you get a lot of like calls throughout the night and stuff like that?
again, like I said, pretty seasonal. When we're foaling mares out, sure, because a foal can get stuck at 2 a.m. And people are watching those mares all night, waiting for them to foal. So they're going to call you right when the crap hits the fan. So, whereas your average horse isn't watched at 2 a.m. So if it starts colicking at 2 a.m., no one's probably going to find it till 6 a.m. Unless it's thrashing and loud and someone lives near the barn or something like that. But so it really depends on the time of year if you get those real true middle of the night calls. Otherwise, it tends to be like a evening feed time, maybe around when people might do a last night check, and then morning, because in the middle of the night, no one knows what's going on with their horses. They're all in bed. So yeah, that's kind of the flow of it.
Gotcha. All right, next question. What is the most challenging part of your job?
I would say probably managing client expectations and handling cases that don't go well. It gets easier with more and more experience out, but managing communications with clients is probably the biggest learning curve you go through. So,
Okay.
I don't even think it's necessarily, I think it's having confidence in your abilities and managing, the clients and keeping them happy. So,
Yes, definitely. What is your favorite part of your job?
I love doing sports medicine. That's the big part of what I do. And I especially like rehabbing athletes after soft tissue injuries. So getting them after they've injured a tendon or ligament, had tendonitis, something like that, going again and watching them return to their previous jobs at, full capacity. If they were jumping, if they were jumpers, returning just showing and staying sound is very rewarding.
Nice. Um, what are your responsibilities of diagnosing and rehabbing a horse?
I would say that greatly depends on the type of injury, but the biggest responsibility in diagnostics is to think through the list of differentials, otherwise your possible diagnosis, and think about what diagnostics can narrow that list down in the most expedient and efficient way. So how can you get the list of 10 things that could be going on down to the one thing that it is, and how quickly can you do it, and how well can you do it? You have to think about how invasive certain things are, the risks, those kind of things. um, does this really need a spinal tap? Does this need, things that might be more involved and carry more risk? And I think the biggest challenge in rehabbing is ensuring that the horse has a decent quality of life during rehab, be that he needs a little bit of chemical assistance to get through some stall rest if he has stall rest, so that he's calm and happy and not, smashing around the stall. And that they stay manageable for the owner while resting, so that the owner feels safe and comfortable. If the horse needs to be hand walked, the owner can safely do that. And making, and keeping all of that in line while also resting whatever needs to be rested in the manner and amount of time necessary for it to heal. So trying to balance horses being horses and
Yes.
being able to still keep them manageable on a daily basis while also getting them the rest they need.
Okay. What inspired you to work with large animals?
I have ridden ever since I was a little tiny kid. I rode hunters, and then I moved on to eventing. I rode lots of wild, crazy ponies that little kids couldn't stay on to make them better for their little kids, and had some off the track horses. But yeah, I've just always loved horses ever since I first started
Awesome.
riding when I was an itty bitty kid.
Yes, they are amazing animals.
They are.
Yes. All right, my last question. Do you have any advice for following this career path?
I would say definitely spend time with a vet, riding around numerous days so that you get a real feel for the lifestyle and the commitment it requires. So it's not for everyone. It's great, but it's not for everybody. Um, and most places love to have externs. I'm usually, we call it an externship before you're in vet school. And then after vet school, you have that internship. Kind of implies that you've graduated or at least gotten partway through. Before that, it's called an externship. Um,
Oh,
and we usually love to have them. It's hard with COVID right now. We have canceled all of our students for COVID.
oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, because we just can't, we have a very tiny little office that we drive around in all day, and we can't take the risk of introducing people in that tight little space with us all day long.
Yeah,
Multiple.
definitely.
So lots of students travel a distance and stay in a lodging on our farm and
Okay.
go around with us. So like it's not even that they're necessarily local. They might fly on a plane to get to us. They might do other things that are unfortunately a little too high risk, because if any of us get sick, we have to call a lot of farms we've been at and tell all those people, and
Yes, and
so
so much more.
yeah, so unfortunately we've got some high risk individuals in our office. We've got um people of various ages, and me with a little infant at home. I just can't have anyone in my space, which makes me really sad,
No.
because I'm a natural. I really, really like to teach. I love to have students
Yeah.
with me, and am sad and I miss them, but hopefully
Yes.
eventually I'll just have to ask them if they're vaccinated and then we can roll.
Yeah, it's a hard time right now. I'm missing out getting that hands-on experience with just school.
Yeah.
But before COVID, how many what did you call them? Extern? Yeah, how many of them would you have?
Just kind of depended. It had gotten a little quiet at our practice because one of the vets just doesn't prefer students. And the one who did had cut back to working part-time as he's getting closer to retirement. So we were actually just starting to ramp it back up again because they had kind of told people no. And then as they were getting them in, they were like, well, hey, would you take this student? And I'm like, yeah, I'll always take students. I'll take all the students. And so we'd
That's
start,
awesome.
yes. And then I had to be like, no.
Mm,
So
so
I think it's
sad.
really hard, especially for people in their fourth year of vet school that are out trying to do their clinicals.
Yes, I
Yeah,
feel for them people. I
yeah,
can't imagine.
I know. I think they're gonna unfortunately have to learn a lot of skills just in their first year of practice.
Yes, definitely.
On job training.
Yes.
So, all
Well, that was all of my questions.
right,
So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
no problem. It was nice to meet you.
Yes, it was nice to meet you too, and I hope everything works out for you.
All right, thanks. You too.
All right, have a good one. Bye.